how to do the Halloween upside down witch cake. So I'm gonna kind of show you what we have and we're gonna get started. Please feel free to pause this video at any time so you can catch up or rewind. Anytime you feel like it, pause the video and take your time. I am gonna go through it quickly, but that does not mean that you need to do it quickly. You can take your time as much as you want and get it the way you like it. And remember, your cake is gonna be perfect and delicious no matter how it turns out, okay? So I'm just gonna go on and show you what you have in your kit, and then items that you have at home or that you purchase from us with the kit too. So everyone will have their cake, their pre-crumb coated cake from us, and then the turntable is something you'd have at home or you can purchase from us as well. Then you'll get a bowl of frosting. You'll get some colored straws we'll be using. We have a light tinted piece of fondant and then a black piece of fondant. We have rolling pin and edger would be something that you would have at home or you would purchase from us. You will have a plastic knife or you can use something sharper at home if you wanted. And some other things that we will need is a little bowl of powdered sugar that we would provide for you, and then you just need a little cup of water and a paintbrush. So we are gonna get started here with our cake. Oop, I forgot over here, so here's my edger. My spatula, sorry. You'll need a spatula too. Okay, so we're gonna grab our spatula and we're gonna scoop up our frosting and we are just gonna go up and down our cake. We're gonna cover a whole cake with our orange frosting. Now remember, the first layer that I did for you is called the crumb coat. That's to catch any crumbs of the cake, and then we do a quick cooling process to make sure that's all locked in. So when you're frosting now, you should get no crumbs in your cake. Now if you are frosting your cake when it's warm, it may be a little harder. If you take your cake and you put it in the fridge or the freezer for a few minutes, the fridge maybe 10 minutes, and you can harden up your buttercream a little bit, and it might be easier to work with. If you're working with a really soft cake at home, it might be a little bit harder to decorate. So I would take the time just to pause this and stick it in the freezer for a few minutes if you feel like your cake is a little too soft. So we're gonna fill our cake up with our frosting, a good layer. Then we're gonna take our edger on the flat side and we're gonna go around and smooth our cake. Now this is the most frustrating part of cake decorating for anyone, is getting a smooth surface. So this isn't gonna be like we're gonna smooth it out quick and be done. It's gonna be a little bit of a process here to get it to the texture that we want it. So you're gonna hold your edger at an angle and you're gonna turn your cake with your edger around your cake, and we're gonna just spin it around and get that first layer off. Now we got a lot of extra frosting. We're gonna scrape that back off into the bowl. Now don't worry if you have holes in your cake or you don't like how it's smoothed out. As you can see, I have a lot of errors here on top too. I'll show you with our final layer here. This is our first layer. We're gonna do a final layer of our cake here when we're done with this layer. And then that's where we'll smooth out all of our imperfections. For the top, I kind of do the same as what we did on the side, except for it's gonna be flat and not on the sides. We're doing the top. We're just gonna spin our cake with it. You're gonna get a lot of overhang on your cake now, which is totally okay. We're gonna scrape off that extra frosting and we're gonna go do this around with the cake again. Now when we get to the top part, we just push those edges that were over now back up. So, I mean, it's seeing pretty good here on the sides. We're gonna go across our bodies and we're going to lightly pull in the cake off the sides, and make sure to scrape every time to get that extra frosting off. Otherwise you're gonna pull out more frosting when you keep going around your cake. So you're gonna scrape and you're going to get rid of the extra frosting. Gently pull off the frosting across from you. All right, now like I said, this layer is not gonna be perfect because we are going to do that next. So if you're getting a lot of jabs in your cake where you get lines like this, that means you're holding your edger at an angle too far, okay? You wanna, too straight on. You wanna have your edger here at an angle so when you're going across, you kind of brush it brush it over and you won't get those jabs, okay? And go back here and smooth that out. Now we're gonna do our final coat. Like I said, please pause the video if you want and take the time to redo that layer if you wanted. We are going to go back through and refill our cake with all that frosting. Okay. Do one more layer here. Make sure it's a nice thick layer of frosting. We're gonna go through the top again. One tip I like to tell people doing cake decorating is it's not being about making your cake perfect, it's learning how to hide your imperfections. It's a real thing. Okay, so remember, we're gonna be making a lot of black lines on our cake of stripes for the witch. So if there's some holes and stuff that you can't fill, that you don't like, we can fill that spot up with one of our black strips we're gonna be doing. So as you can see here with my final layer, I got some gouges in here. Now this is gonna be much like spackling, I call it, like when you're painting your house, or you young cats who haven't painted yet, you'll learn early. So we're gonna take just a little bit of frosting and we're gonna just patch up our hole, not the whole cake. So see how I have just a patch there? And then I'm gonna go through with my edger again and I'm gonna smooth it out, okay? Now I got my top I got to do, so I'm going to take my edger again and go to the top I had before. Push all over to the side, which is a-okay, because we're gonna go through now. This is gonna be my final smoothing edge I do for this side. I'm gonna push all the sides back up again, and then I'm gonna smooth out the top. So I'm gonna go through and make sure that this final spin here is how I want my cake to look. So now I have my smooth edges here, and I'm going to now take my edger, go across my cake, and pull the sides in. Okay, like I said, this is a long process. I know I do it fast. I've been doing it for years. So please take your time, pause the video, and go through and smooth out your cake. Like I said, if you're working with a chilled cake, it is gonna be a little bit easier to keep your edges smoother. So if you have that opportunity to chill it, then I would do so. All right, so now I got this smooth. I'm gonna go through here and kind of clean up my turntable here with this extra frosting. I have some extra orange frosting now on my cake plate. I'm gonna lightly smooth that out just to keep a border on the cake. Okay. So we got our cake now ready and iced. So we are going to now move on to the fondant, the fun part. Oops. All right, sorry, I'm just trying to smooth out my bottom here. Clean up any extra frosting we have. One thing I did forget to tell you at the beginning of the video is if you have at home, I always keep a dry washcloth and I keep a wet washcloth. So something we can wipe our hands with as we go, but when we work with fondant, we wanna make sure our hands are dry. So after you use a wet cloth, you wanna make sure to use the dry cloth, otherwise it can get pretty messy. So I'm going to now move my cake up forward. I'm gonna move mine away. I'm going to clean up my station here, because like I said, you don't want any frosting or water or moisture on with our fondant. It can get pretty messy. So I'm gonna keep my dry and wet towel up here. We're gonna get our rolling pin, and then I am going to get ready to work with our black fondant. So we're gonna make our stripes on our cake. So you might wanna knead it a little bit. If your hands are a little bit sticky, that's what our powdered sugar is for. We're gonna dust up our hands a little bit and then dust up our work table a little bit. And if it's still a little sticky, I would do a little more at a time, but less is more with powdered sugar. You really don't wanna use a lot or it can dry out your fondant pretty quick. So we are going to roll it out. Okay. Take our little rolling pin. We are going to make our stripes for our cake. So I'm going to roll it. We want it to be a little bit thicker, but not too thick. We want to make sure that we save some of our fondant. We need to make our witch's black shoes and her skirt. So, all right, I got a nice smooth surface here of our black. I am going to now make sure it's all smooth here. Use my little knife, and if you have something at home you want to use that's sharper, you can, but a little plastic knife does just fine. And I'm going to cut off the edge that's a little bumpy. Now I'm going to start with my straight, I'm going to cut the sides too so we can have all straight lines here. So we are going to now take it from the straight edge side, and we're going to start making our stripes. So I'm going to cut down the side. I'm going to start off with 5 stripes. You can do more, you can do less, but remember we need to save some of our fondant for our witch. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to just run my fingers off the side of the fondant to smooth out any sides that may be rough. So if you run your fingers down, you'll see that it kind of tucks in the fondant, any of the extra stuff that may have been cut weird. I'm going to quickly measure the base of my cake and up to the top. So I can see here that this is going to go past the center. So I don't want it to go past the center, to the center max or a little bit further out, because remember her dress is going to go. So I'm going to cut off that top, and then I'm going to remeasure these ones and cut off the extra here so we don't have to do that on the cake. So now I'm going to take my other stripes, going to clean up the edges here, and I am going to then place them on the cake. Okay, so we got 2 here. 3. I think we're going to have to make a few more stripes. 4. 5, I think we're gonna need 6. So again, depending on how thick you made your stripes, will determine how many you will need. I'm gonna use that same line I had. There we go. And cut my 6. Smooth off the edges. And if there's a little powdered sugar left on your black fondant, that's okay, because we are going to use our paintbrush to clean that up. So you can see I have all those little specks in there, powdered sugar, that's okay. We are going to be cleaning that up at the end with our paintbrush. So we're going to go back to our fondant. Okay. We are going to knead it. Now each of you have 2 sets. You can pick if you want your witch to have orange legs coming out or if you want her to have white and black legs coming out, okay? So I'm going to pick white and black. I'm going to stick them in the top. Just like so. Okay, so it looks kind of funny now, but then we are going to take black. We're going to make 2 even tiny balls. Okay. So I have 2 balls here, and I'm going to stick them right on top of the straws. And then we are going to now make almost a teardrop rolled out of our fondant. So we're going to roll, and then you kind of go off to the side and roll. So now I got myself a little teardrop fondant. Okay. I'm going to lay it down on my table. I'll show you guys. I'm just going to cut the end. So this is going to be the heel for the witch for her shoe. Okay. So I cut the end of the shoe. You can see it there. Okay. So now we're gonna stick that on top of that ball we just made. Okay, so now we got one little shoe done, if you can see there. So we're gonna do the same thing for the other side. Give her two shoes. Okay. Now we are going to work on her skirt. So we're going to take our fondant again, roll it out. We're going to actually give her little legging shorts on her, on the straw here, just for the under the skirt part. So we're going to roll out our fondant again. We have left here, and you can discard of the other colored straw. You should have one more white straw, leave that there. But what other colored straw you're not using, you can set aside. So I'm going to cut out a straight line on the bottom again, so I can start with a straight edge. And then I'm going to do about an inch thick line here, and then I'm going to make two cuts. So I'm going to have a little square like so, and this is about all we need to wrap around the straw. So you can try to pull your straws out if you want to do it. It may be easier, but I don't like to do this until I know when I put the straws in about how deep we want to go into the cake with the straws. And wrap it around. You shouldn't have too much overlapping fondant there. So it's just a little square that can reach all, wrap around the straw pretty perfectly. Like I said, if it's easier to take the straw out, take the straw out and do it that way. So here we are. I got here two little, there you go, you call, I guess, her underpants or shorts under her skirt, but that is gonna be coming off her legs. All right, and so now that we still have this rolled out, we're gonna do our first layer here of her skirt. So this one's gonna go, we want a bigger strip, and it's gonna go on the outside of the cake, on the outside of her dress, like so. So it's gonna be kind of like this, except for we're gonna ruffle it up. Oh, I gouged my cake a little bit. So we need to, that we cut this out. We're gonna use kind of the back of the knife. It's kind of hard to show you. I'm gonna do a few, if you can see here, you can use the back or the front, but we're gonna just make some, push on our fondant and flatten one side, and it's gonna, if you can see what I'm doing here, I'll show you what it can look like. It's gonna give it that little ruffle kind of look on the bottom. Okay? So we're gonna ruffle up her dress. Okay? Now this one's okay if it's a little bit bigger because it's gonna be the base of the dress. I'm gonna go back through my finger now and give it another good push, just to have that one side a little bit thinner than the other. Maybe easier too if you just use your finger and not the knife. It's totally up to you. Now I got my ruffly skirt. Now it looks kind of funny, but it'll look cute when it's all done. Cakes are a process. So we're gonna take this and we're gonna lightly wrap it around the cake, and we're gonna pinch off where we meet, okay? So see how mine's a little bit funky? That's okay, that's how we want it, okay? So now I'm gonna kind of almost push up some of the other sides a little bit more too to give it more of that ruffle look. Okay, so if you just pinch some pieces together, they're going to go up together. Go through and pinch some, you can pull some in, some out, but you want the skirt to kind of look like she's stuck in a cake and she's frazzled, her skirt's going everywhere. Okay, so that's my first layer here. Now we're gonna do that again. So I got enough here of the fondant to do another row. If you don't, just combine your fondant again in a ball and roll it back out. So I got my other piece here. I'm gonna go through and flatten my piece again with a knife, and I'm gonna go back through and push with my finger. Again, if you're too sticky, use a little bit of powdered sugar. Give it that ripple look. Okay, now I got my second ripple piece, or the ruffle, and I'm gonna go back through here and go even further inside than I did the last one. I'm gonna pinch my sides together. So at first it looks like this. I just pinched them together. So now her dress has gone crazy again. I'm gonna kind of push them and lay them over how I want again, pushing the inside of the dress closer to the center so we're filling in that orange space from her legs to the skirt. Okay. So now I got 2 layers of her skirt, looking cute. Now I need to go back through and roll this out again for my final layer. Start off by cutting off the bottom piece. Like previously, it's a little thick, so I'm going to cut off a little bit of the top. And I'm going to go through and flatten out my ends again. This one I'm going to try to pull a little bit harder to make the ruffles a little bit longer. So if you just pull straight out, you'll get longer ruffles. And I'm going to push down with my finger again. Again, feel free to pause the video. If you don't like your ruffles, you can just easily put your fondant back in a bowl or ball and re-roll it, okay? So I got my final layer. Now I'm gonna go all the way as I can to cover all the orange inside the center of the cake. And you may not see those shorts that you made her anymore, that's okay. You'll see it in the center of your cake. All right, and now we have this dress that's razzle dazzle. Now, if you are at home and this is falling too much, your fondant is falling over too much and you want more space between your cake, let me give you here a tip I should have told you to grab. If you have any paper towels or napkins at home, what we do here is we take our dry paper towel or napkin and we're gonna stick it underneath where we want the dress to stick up, okay? So I'm gonna stick these inside the cake where I want the ruffles to go up. Now this is how we do some fondant flowers and stuff if you're working with fondant at home and you don't want them touching. You stick your paper towels underneath where you want it to stick up, and then you let it sit overnight to dry. You cannot stick the cake in the fridge though, or freezer to dry. It has to be out on the counter to dry overnight, okay? If you put it in the freezer or the fridge, you're gonna get moisture. And we don't want moisture in the cake because that's just gonna get the fondant back wet and it won't stand up at all then. It'll actually get pretty slimy. So I'm gonna cut off all these pieces here. And then I will show you here what it looks like when it dries. So until then, we got our witch on here. We're gonna let our dress dry. I know it looks super silly right now, but I'm telling you, give it a few hours and it'll be super cute. If you have a few hours to wait, you can just do it for a couple hours. Otherwise, you can do it, let it sit overnight, like I said. So I got my dress up how I want it, and we are going to take our paintbrush and our water, and we are just gonna lightly go through and clean up the spots that we have the powdered sugar on. Okay, now you don't want to use a lot of water. I'm just the tiniest dab ever. And make sure it's not soaking wet on your cake, okay? So we're gonna do a tab, wipe it off a little bit, and then brush it on your cake. If you get too much water on your cake, you are gonna get slimy fondant, and that's not any fun to work with, and it's gonna take a very long time to dry, okay? So we are going to go through, and I'm gonna clean up all my edges here. The water will also get up if you have any orange frosting on your black fondant. You should be able to clean that up with it. I'm gonna go through. Clean up anything here that looks a little bit dusty, I call it. So I'm gonna go through my whole cake and get. Now, if you don't have a paintbrush, you can feel free to use your finger too. Make sure your hands are washed, or a light paper towel, but you might get texture on your cake if you use paper towel. But if you use your pinky finger and just lightly go through and dust, you can too if you do not have a paintbrush. Or a Q-tip you can use as well. So I'm gonna make sure I get all this cleaned up here. All right, keep my paper towels in there. And now I'm going to move on here to the broom that we're gonna stick on the side here. So then once we get our broom on, we basically are done here with our cake. So we have our white broomstick. We are gonna use a little bit of powdered sugar here. We're gonna roll out our small piece here of the tan brown fondant. I'm going to cut off the top, and I'm gonna cut more of an angle on this. So let me show you here on the sides. So it's gonna look like this, okay? And we are going to then make slits, kind of like a broom here, into the base of the fondant. So let me show you here. So I cut it all the way around, if you can see, just not all the way to the top. So it's just right on the bottom and almost to the top, but not all the way. We are going to pick up our straw, and we are gonna wrap this around. Now I would put the straw just barely at the end. You see how you can see my straw and the fondant on the top is just barely covering it? That's gonna give it a base to stand on. So you wanna make sure that you have it close enough to where the straw can still sit without smashing your broom you just made. So I'm gonna lay this down. I'm gonna take another piece of what we have extra. I'm gonna roll it out into what we call a worm, the worm roll. I'm gonna wrap it around the top of my broom there. So it looks like this now. And then I'm gonna take what I have left here and make it a ball. I'm going to stick it on top here of my broom. So now I got my little broom. I'm gonna stick this on my cake, right here, against there. And then I will show you here soon what our witch looks like after we get this all dried up. All right.